And I was 7 months pregnant, total mental breakdown, because I realized at that point, I didn't even know what love was.
Oh.
No idea what unconditional love felt like.
Welcome to Heartbreak to Wholeness, the podcast helping you heal from the mindfuck of narcissistic relationships and move towards the secure, peaceful woman you want to become. We will explore all of the tools that you need to get through your griefs, to move past those I'll be alone forever fears, and rebuild your confidence so you can move forward in healthy relationships as your full self, never to get sucked into the narcissistic spell again. I am your host, Bree Walta, relationship clarity coach and EFT certified practitioner. Let's dive in. Welcome to this episode where I am chatting with Tammy Vincent, speaker, coach, podcaster, and best-selling author, about growing up in a dysfunctional, traumatic childhood. If you have ever rolled your eyes at the mention of inner child work or wanted to do therapy but just didn't want to go into the mommy and daddy issues, please keep listening. Both Tammy and I speak about our childhoods and how we ended up in a 12-step program called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, sometimes better known as ACA. We share how those experiences really shaped our adult relationships and what being a people pleaser actually means and how to shift away from it. You're going to hear the eye-opening life experience that Tammy had that was really the catalyst for her to dive into this work and start shifting her generational trauma, and our top tips for women who might just be starting out in this journey and really starting to acknowledge the depth of what happened in their childhood and how they can move through it with grace. And remember to stay to the end of the episode because we always pull an oracle card to offer you a specific message that you can hold on to this week in your healing. Welcome, Tammy. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. It was so interesting when we met that the circumstances where we met, we were sharing, what we did for a living. And when you shared that you had a podcast around adult child of dysfunction, I was like, oh, I worked that program.
Well, right.
In ACA. So I'm glad and not glad that we share that commonality in our childhood.
Right. No, I know. It's funny because I meet people all the time and they're like, I'm so glad I met you. And then they're like, no, I'm not glad I met you. I'm in a 12-step program with you. And we're like, it's okay. We're in each other's space. So it's good. It's good.
Yes. And for the listeners, if you aren't familiar with ACA, it's Adult Child of Alcoholic and Dysfunctional Families. And it's sometimes referred to as adult child of dysfunction as well. So really any dysfunctional patterns that you grew up with your caregivers or in your family household that is affecting you now.
Right. And it makes sense that they kind of merge the two. Even like the National Association of Children of Alcoholics, now they've kind of conglomerate and they work together with ACA, which is Alcoholics and Dysfunction, because we all know the level of dysfunction, it doesn't necessarily have to include a substance.
Yeah.
It's the dysfunction is the same. The benefits. Did I really just say the everlasting effects are the same. So it's all the same.
Yeah. We can turn those effects into superpowers, right? When we understand them and know how to wield them for benefit. But
right.
A bit of excavation and exploration around what happened in childhood and how is that affecting my relationships now, my life now, my work now. Like it's so widespread over every aspect of who we are.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. When did you know that you wanted to really narrow in and focus on helping women move through this program?
I've always kind of wanted to do it, and it was just life just took me in different directions. I was a teacher and then I moved. So then I didn't read up my teaching certificate, and I ended up in a job that I was in for like 9 years and it had nothing to do with what I wanted to do. And I lost that job during COVID. And so it was really a wake up call for me. Like I got this big slap in the face, like, okay, you lost your business. It's time to pick something else. And you're at an age and a point in your life where you have so many tools to help people. You can either pick something and do something for good and to use what God gave you and all of your trials and tribulations and use it for a purpose, or you can just go get another job. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not ready to do that. So that was really what kind of catapulted me. I don't know if I told you this story, but I went to it's like a Christian business seminar kind of thing. And we were doing something there called the listening prayer, where
Mm.
it was 125, 150 people in the room, and you kneel down. They put on this really nice music, and you just ask a question, and then you listen to see if God sends you anything. And it was really kind of interesting. It was 125 people. So we're all taking notes and we're all, writing these things that are coming to us. And when we stood up and we were done, the gentleman that was kind of initiating the whole process, he looked around the room and he pointed at me and he said, I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know where you are in your life. He's like, but he's telling me it is your time to move right now.
Whoa.
And it was really like, I'm like, okay, when you're prophesized to, you got to move on it. Like, that is not a sign from me. That is a sign from someone else going, just move.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Literally within 3 or 4 months, I had my book written. I had
Wow.
joined a couple coaching programs. I had already had a coaching certificate, but I joined up with a coach, a business coach, to go. I got all this information and I have all these tools from 30 years of, NLP certifications and all this stuff. And I'm like, how do I use it? How do I use it to help people?
Yeah.
So
That's incredible. When we finally align with like our purpose and what we're supposed to be doing, things open so fast. Things come together fast. The fact that you wrote a book in 3 months is like insane.
Yep. Because I was like, who do I want to help? And my heart was really, and it still is, it's always going to be with the children, because I just think if we can get to the children before this damage is done and empower them, to understand what's happening to them as it's happening, even though it's not pleasant for them, but they can kind of develop these skills that I'm now teaching 50, 60, and 70-year-olds to have.
Yeah.
It's very, very helpful. But then as I started, kind of reaching out to these children and started handing my book to children, which is called Surviving Alcoholic Parents, it was very ironic that every adult said, gosh, I wish I had had this when I was, 30 years ago, but what can I do now?
Yes.
And that's where I was like, okay, that's my avenue of genius here, because it took me 30 years to figure out some of these things, and I can shortcut that process for people.
Oh yeah. The inner child healing that we're able to do as adults is profound. And that's really the way that we move through the stuckness, the trauma that we experience from the
Mm.
dysfunctional families. It's sort of a running joke with when I bring new clients on and they're like, "Oh, am I gonna have to do inner child work?" And it's like, if you want to heal,
Yeah,
we have to look backwards. We have to look at the origin point of the wounding and see how that keeps replaying itself over and over and over in your relationships.
absolutely. And even just, knowing, being self-aware is great. But like going, I talk to people that are in recovery and they stop drinking. And I'm like, that's the easy part. The
Yeah.
easy part is stopping drinking. The hard part is making it so that you never want to drink again, or want to numb, or want to do whatever thing that you were doing. You have to deal with the past, no matter what they say. I truly believe until you deal with the past, you can't move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent before this lifetime as a coach, I spent about a decade in the addiction world. And in getting to know a lot of people who were in recovery, there's a difference between being in recovery and being sober. Like you said, it's easy. Well, it's hard to let go of the substance, but in the realm of the other work that you have to do once the substance isn't there to numb, that
Right.
is the easier part. The
Yeah.
recovery part is really looking at the childhood. It's really looking at your pain, your wounding. What were those things that were causing you to reach for the drug or the alcohol? And
Right.
that's that's tough. That takes a lot of courage to do.
Mhm. Yes, it does. And, a lot of people in recovery, you spent, that was your niche. You were in that. How many people do we know that stop drinking and then they become gambling addicts, or they become binge eaters, or it's all the same. So the, like, for everybody out there listening, you hear that?
It's the answer you didn't want, but that you need.
Go back and reparent yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to love that little you, because that's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. So give us an understanding of where you came from. What did your dysfunctional childhood look like, and how did that that start to shape you before you really had awareness to dive into your work?
Well, it was a bunch of little things, and it started, when you look at like the adverse childhood experiences, it's an ACE score, and it's all these horrible things can happen to children, and it's like, there's a divorce or a death in the family or alcoholism in the family or incarceration, like all of these things. And I think there was 12 on the list, and I think I had 11 of them. And because they all kind of tie together, I say, you can have dysfunction without having addiction in your household, but you cannot have addiction in your household without having dysfunction. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that is true.
And I remember like the very first moment that it really hit me, I was literally in first grade, and we were at a ball field, and it was one of those like big complexes. I don't know what they'd call them, like sports complex, metro. It was a big baseball tournament. So there was probably 10 or 12 ball fields. And so you figure 30 people for each ball field. So 400 or 500 people at this place. And I remember being on a swing set, and my little sister was standing next to me, and I was 6 or 7. I was in first grade. And all of a sudden I heard like this shriek. And I look up and I knew immediately, like, oh, good golly, that's my mother. Like I knew. And I look over, and she had dropped her pants and was like running through this ball field. Like, I'm like, what is going on? And come to find out, she had been stung by a bee, which probably died the minute it stung her in retrospect, looking back. But so my dad like hugging her and consoling her and, trying to get her to put her pants back on. And like the words, like the language coming out of this woman's mouth, I was like, what? Oh my goodness. And we got in the car after this was all said and done, and it was never mentioned. Never mentioned. My mom never said, oh, I'm sorry. I know that probably was really embarrassing. But, that was first grade. And we didn't move until I was in fourth grade. And so, first to fourth grade, I only had one friend because it was someone who my parents drank with, their parents. But I wouldn't go to roller skating rinks. I wouldn't go to birthday parties. I wouldn't go anywhere for fear that somebody with that was at that ball field would
Oh,
recognize me.
oh wow.
So it was like literally at 6 years old, the amount of shame was already ingrained. Like I wasn't even good enough to go out in public because,
Yeah.
and it just escalated from there. I mean, we would have police coming to our house. I can remember, and just being afraid all the time. My dad worked in New York City, so he commuted a lot. Like he didn't get home till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. My mom was a child psychiatrist, but she was too busy to like take me to sporting events, stuff like that. So I walked everywhere. I can remember always being afraid, always carrying like tap shoes in my hand with the spiked heels because you
Oh,
just never knew, you know?
yeah.
And you just think like, I think back about some of the things, like when my parents would come home at night and put the key in the door, I could tell by how long it took them to put that key in the door if I could come greet them and say hi, or I needed to just hide under the covers, or it could be so bad that it was in a closet.
Mm.
And so it just kept getting, I went and lived with my mom. My parents got divorced. They told me they were getting divorced in the second grade, and they didn't even separate until the ninth grade.
Wow.
So for 7 years, they lived together, manipulating each other. If mom said yes, I would go ask dad. If dad said yes, or if mom said no, I would go ask dad. If dad said no, I would go ask mom. I mean, I learned to play them against each other because there was no family stability at all. Like you talk about an incohesive unit. Like literally, I was a great manipulator by 10 years old.
Oh, of course. You had to be to survive.
Absolutely. And it was, and then it was like my 16th year was my worst. That was when my father sent me to go live with my mother, who at that time was very into drugs. Um, Thought it was okay to let me pay her debts with her drug dealers.
Ooh,
You can kind of read between the lines on that one,
yeah.
but it was a world of fear. I used to run to the grocery store. I wasn't being fed. And also through all of that, the message was, I hate you. I wish you had never been born,
Mm.
So that was literally, and then, I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. I'm going to do exactly the opposite. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get straight A's. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to graduate, all going through the emotions of life, but completely numb to life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like, in your childhood, there was no room to have any sort of your own experience. It was all hyper vigilant into what is mom and dad doing? How safe am I? What do I need to be afraid of? And when we do that, when we turn on the hypervigilance, we turn off our feeling. There's no
Mhm.
there's no room for that. There's no space because we're just trying to survive.
Absolutely. And even the most joy, like I remember having fun as a kid, and the older I get, the more fun memories I have. But all of my memories always end with being told, "What's so funny? Why are you laughing? There's nothing to laugh about. Why are you so happy all the time? Blah, blah, blah." Like even that was like shunned.
Yeah.
What do why is your life so good and mine's miserable? I heard that so many times from my mother when I was just trying to be a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you get to be happy? Well, I don't know. I'm 8.
That's my
All my
job as an 8-year-old.
yeah, all my friends seem to be able to smile, like, but I can remember literally getting slapped for just smiling,
Hmm.
you know?
The shame was running deep in all different veins throughout your experience, it sounds like.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were 16 and you were numb and you were moving through moving into adulthood. When did you start to recognize that you had a problem that you wanted to look at?
Well, I realized right away because I was making a lot of bad choices. My college years were my party years. I made a lot of bad, but it wasn't until I got married the first time and was getting ready to have my first child, that's when it hit. Like I was reading that book, Love You Forever. Did you ever read that book?
No.
It's a children's book about an unconditional love between a mom and her son. And the kid like goes through these stages of life and the mother continues to love him unconditionally and singing this song to him, I'll love you forever, forever and ever, my mom or my baby you'll be. And at the end, the tides are turned and the son is holding the mom and she's frail and she's old and he's rocking her back and forth and he's singing, I'll love you forever, my mommy you'll be. And I was like 7 months, 6 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant, total mental breakdown because I realized at that point, I didn't even know what love was.
Oh,
No idea what unconditional love felt like. I mean, even my first husband, we were just talking about this yesterday. I was infatuated.
yeah.
It was someone that paid me attention. It was someone that told me they would take care of me. Literally, that's what it was about. So even there was no unconditional love.
Mhm.
I could have thought of a million reasons a million things he could have done, and I would have stopped loving him instantly because it wasn't that. But I knew as a mom, I had a different responsibility.
Yeah.
And that was my wake up call because I also knew that just doing the opposite of what my parents did to me was not the answer either. That there had to be some kind of happy medium and there had to be a healthy way to do this. And that's when I just I went, started therapy. I joined AA groups and Al Anon groups, a little of everything. I was throwing everything at the wall because I was also drinking, still numbing, still, doing bad choices. But that was my wake up call because I realized in order to stop this cycle and to not have my children be exactly the way I was, I had to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, our attachment wounds, if we're not looking at them, we're passing them down, whether it's
Yeah.
unconscious, and it might be through different behavior, right? But that the shame that you experienced might have leaked through to your children in some unknown way to you. So
Well, and they say what 7 generations it goes back.
yeah,
So and I was ready. I was not, I couldn't think of someone in my family, on my mother's side of the family, in any generation of anybody I knew that wasn't an addict of some kind. And I was not going to do that to my children. And I did. I got a lot of science behind it. And now I love the science behind it because, like I tell my kids, even if I had never picked up a drink, technically they are still para alcoholic because
mm,
I have all of the characteristics. I mean, when you go through trauma like that, your brain physically forms differently.
yep,
You're logical in your reasoning. When you're running on cortisol and you're running on adrenaline and you're in that fight and flight mode, your reasoning side of your brain is literally shrinking.
yeah,
And that becomes a DNA, that becomes a genetic thing that you're literally passing on to your children. So I said I warned them, right? Not warn them. I don't want to say, but I let them know I never hid anything from them.
Mhm. Mhm. Which was exact opposite of what you experienced, right? With you getting in the car and things never being talked about. And I would assume
Exactly.
the addiction was never talked about and the abuse that you endured was never talked about. Like things were swept under the rug. So
Exactly.
for you to raise your children in a family where there's transparency and honesty is it's got to be healing for you. And I'm curious, do you feel that in that experience with them?
I do. They're grown now, so that's two of them still live with me, but yeah, I do. And it was good, but I learned, I joke around and I kind of say my first one was my learning experience. That is when I learned that boundaries and that is, all because those were all new concepts to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't start this journey of self-awareness and having emotions and all of that until he was a baby.
Mhm.
So he was kind of, I don't want to say he was my guinea pig. That doesn't sound really, but I mean, he kind of was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did I make mistakes? Yes. But does every parent make mistakes? Absolutely. You know, and I don't like the expression like when people go, well, my mom did the best she could do with what she had. That doesn't alleviate everything. That doesn't make everything go away. It gives a reason and it puts logic behind it. But at the same time, it, it doesn't make it go away. So I don't like to use that expression like my mom did the best she could. Well, no, she really didn't because she could have wanted to get better.
Right.
My father could have wanted to stop drinking
Yeah.
and they didn't. So they didn't do the best they could.
They were at the capacity that they were at their capacity that they had, right?
Right. Right. And now I can look back at it and go, well, maybe if somebody had showed them, maybe if someone had told them, maybe, and that's why I do what I do. Maybe if a teacher had said something, a college professor had said something to my mother when she was 78 pounds and been like, man, you need to get some help. You're anorexic. Like, what is your problem? What is the underlining reason? Not let's put you in a hospital and force feed you. But let's fix the mental issues that you're having.
Yeah. Yes. Using your voice to share your story and writing books and be able to spread the message that other people can hear it is so powerful because you never know they're going to pick up something or a friend's going to say, I'm reading this amazing book. And that's going to be the spark that changes their entire life.
Yep. And that's all you can hope is you can only hope, the old expression, if only one.
Yeah.
If only one person hears this podcast that you're putting on right now and says, wow, maybe I could have a better life. Maybe I can get rid of that narcissistic husband. Whatever it is, maybe I am worthy to have more, which is what millions and millions of people on the planet right now do not believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Was worthiness a thing that was a sticking point for you and the amount of shame that you experienced?
Yeah, it was a subconscious
Yeah.
issue. It wasn't necessarily something like I never physically said to myself, I'm not worthy,
Mhm.
but my actions spoke, I'm not worthy because I let people walk all over me. I let my husband talk to me horribly. I gave everybody attention before myself. I acted like I didn't believe I was worthy. And that's really how it manifests in itself. Like people don't go, oh, I'm a, adult child of an alcoholic and I don't feel worthy.
Yeah. Yes.
But if they want spaghetti for dinner and their husband said, and they hate tacos and their husband says, I want tacos, they go, okay, tacos
Yeah.
it is.
Right.
That's not feeling worth because you don't believe that you are worth the attention and the love and the getting what you want. You just don't believe you are. I call it the not enough.
Yes.
We're not good enough, funny enough, smart enough, happy enough, I mean, even happy enough. But it's just the not enough. And that manifests through work, through relationships, through absolutely everything.
Yeah. Really, we've glorified this term of people pleasing, and it
Mm.
almost in like a positive light or a humorous light of like, oh, I'm just a people pleaser. But what that actually means is you're self-abandoning and you don't believe that your needs matter. You don't believe that you're worth being taken care of the way that you're taking care of other people, or you don't believe that you're worth the time that you're giving other people. And that's, like you said, a wound that bleeds into every part of your life.
Yes. And also when you have the people pleaser, it's combined with the fact that you're not worthy. And also that natural instinct we have for connection and love. And we're just trying to get what we didn't get. So we will do and say anything, be anything, whatever we need to get that validation that we're missing. So you take those two, it's like a double whammy. You throw them into this big pot and it's like, I don't believe I am worth it, but yet I'll do anything to get it. So it's so self-sabotaging.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And to go back to what you had mentioned about your first husband, that relationship being like you needed him. You needed him to want you, right? To choose you. And
Right.
you did because your parents were not giving you that in your childhood. So when we
Right.
that wounding, we're trying to replay it in our adulthood to get the original wound met. That
Exactly.
repetitive compulsion that we're in, where like I'm really looking for belonging and being chosen by my mom or my dad, and I think I can get it through my husband now, right?
Right.
Which really just repeatedly wounding us because it's never going to heal that original wound.
Right. And I was a little different. A lot of the people, as a matter of fact, most of my people that I work with, they're more like I have to show him and give him everything. Where I don't know. I feel like it took me longer to heal because I missed that part. I was so angry too at the same time. It's like I was having this internal battle with myself. Like, yes, I know if I need that validation from him, but I'm not willing. It's almost like I knew there was something missing. So I wasn't the perfect wife because I was a little rebellious and I was I was still angry.
Mhm.
So a lot of people are like, oh, I do everything for my husband and I cook and clean and I just try to be the perfect wife. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna pretend I did that. I didn't, I was more just wanted to be someone's friend. I just wanted to, like have him there. I don't know. It's very different. And everybody's different. Everybody reacts to every circumstance different. And that's why I'm sure with the people you work with, there's no A to Z step.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when you start to look back into some of this stuff, it touches on a lot of places that we've kept really hidden or kept
Mhm.
mentalized. And
Mhm.
sometimes I just had a session with a client this morning where she's like, I feel like I'm getting worse. Like I feel more uncomfortable more of the time and I'm not even talking to the person anymore. I was like, yeah, that's because you're actually in the grief now. You're actually touching in all the places that you haven't yet, that you've
Right.
been avoiding. And that process is painful to look at.
Yeah. And also just, I truly believe God doesn't give us what we can't handle at the time. Like we handle what he gives us. So as we get stronger, he unravels more layers.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, oh, look at that red stop sign at the end of the road. That's where I'm healed.
Yep.
It is a never ending journey. And it's one day at a time. For people that are just starting out, it might be 1 second at a time.
Yeah. Yes. I look at it like a spiral staircase, right? Where we're continuously moving up, but we're coming around to the same trigger in a different fashion or a different package with the more that we learn and the more that we experience. Clients of mine will be like, I've already done this. I've already sat with my fear of being alone, right? But now it's coming up in a different way that still needs your attention. And we get more
Right.
at tending to that part of us.
Right. I had a client yesterday. It was so funny. She called me up and she was like, okay, so this thing happened. And all I could think of was like WWTD. And I'm like, what? She's like, what would Tammy do? And I was like, she goes, because you have made me so violently self-aware, I'm starting to hate myself. Yeah. And I mean, she was kidding, but I was just like, no, that's really good. And she had a thought and and I was like, well, can I give you my take? And I just kind of like threw a couple little words and then she's like, oh, and then she started obviously processing and she's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, and it was all kind of coming back, but she needed to unravel another layer. And she did. She felt like she was going backwards. And I was like, no, you're not going backwards. You would just know how to process that now. And it was a quick moment of, oh wow, okay, I know what this is. Now I have to deal with it. It
Yes.
was, yeah, it was fun.
Self-awareness is both a blessing and a curse sometimes, where you're like, oh, I can't unsee that I'm doing this thing, or I can't unsee that I'm back in this pattern. Uh,
Right.
which means that if you can see it and don't do anything about it, then you feel even worse about that experience.
Well, that's the vicious cycle. And especially like when we do so much work on your inner critic and calming that inner critic and all this stuff and just be giving yourself some grace, which for those of you out there listening, that's number one is give yourself some grace. But when you don't and you mess up, it's a vicious cycle. So it's just my best thing. And I said to her, I said, well, what are we going to practice today? And she's like, I know, curiosity without judgment. I'm like, just be curious. Like, she's like, I know. And,
Yeah.
but it's true. Like, because you don't want to beat yourself up about everything because you will.
Yeah.
It's been beaten into us all of our lives that you're not enough. It's not enough. So if you let yourself go down that rabbit hole, it'll just keep going and keep going and keep going. So just be curious. Why did I do that? If there's somebody right directly in front of you that you can apologize to, just take responsibility for your actions in the moment and then go home and sit with it and explore it.
Yes. Yeah. My similar eye roll that I get from my clients when they're like, I know, compassion, 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 because I say that over and over and over because we judge ourselves and feel compassion at the same time. There's not healing that comes from judgment. We have to find the compassion to be able to find the curiosity, to be able to sit with that part of us who's needing something or in some sort of pain or was triggered because of a past pain. And the more that we can look at ourselves in those parts of, okay, here's my inner critic again, or here's my fear of being alone again, we can get curious, right? Because it's not like, oh, I'm this thing and I've reverted all the way back to the beginning. Like, no, that part is just back. It's just, it got
Yep.
flared up for some reason, and we want to figure out what the reason is.
Exactly. Love it.
Yeah. What does this look like in your relationship now? So I'm assuming your relationship now is healthier or more aligned than your first marriage.
Yes, I've been married now for 22 years, remarried.
Yeah.
So, and it's totally different. Totally different. And a lot of it is I give myself a lot of credit because I've done the work. Like I know I'm not reactive like I used to be. There's communication, there's honesty, there's not being, I mean, I lived my life so on the defensive, just ready for that next shoe to drop. And I don't do that. And at the same time, like I have boundaries, I have healthy boundaries. I can stand up for myself. I don't go through life walking on eggshells. And in that, then I feel like that person gets the best of you.
Yes. Yes. You having done the work coupled with a person who is also in a healthy space really allows for that safety to blossom, right? And for you
Yeah.
guys to be able to communicate and share vulnerably and move through challenges together and not go into defense mode and fight each other.
Right.
We can take responsibility and accountability for our part, and
Right.
we could even be doing like the most we can and trying the hardest we can. But if we're with a narcissistic person or another type of manipulative person, that can be still spun around on its head.
Right. And I've gotten it's different. I've learned a lot through that. And I like that you mentioned going back to that narcissistic person because that's just really any toxic relationship. And it doesn't have to be a spouse or a sibling it doesn't have to be someone that close. It can be someone at work. It can be someone that you just know. It could be your husband's friend. But I've gotten very good at spotting the red flags right away and knowing what my values are and what I truly value in a person and in a situation. And now I don't care if I want out, I'm out.
Yeah.
For my own good.
Yes. Yes. There's no more of trying to mold yourself into another person or become what they like or they desire or they need you to be. It's like, no, I see that we're not compatible and I'm going to step away.
Mm-hmm. I remember the day that I actually said to myself, or I was talking to someone and they were like, well, she's mad at you. And I was like, you know what? What other people think of me is none of my business. And she said, wait, I don't think that's the expression. I said, oh no, it's mine. None of my business. I don't care. What you see is what you get. If you don't like it, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But that takes a lot of worth and confidence
Yeah.
to be able to say, I'm okay if you don't like me. I don't
Hmm.
need to go backwards and make that
And that
right.
did not come easy. Believe me, that came many, many, many years of beating myself up over everything.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to the woman listening who's like really interested in the concept of grace and the concept of being able to drop the judgment or the criticism and just can't? They can't seem to make that step. What
One of the things I talk to people about, and I use this even on my own self, is first of all, you have to become aware that you have that self critic, that you have that inner critic. And as soon as you catch that voice coming at you, acknowledge it, first of all, but challenge it. And sometimes, like, especially when I was doing the inner child work, it really helped me to either look at a picture of myself as a child or just look in a mirror and be like, Tammy, this is what you think you did. Now picture your little self or someone that you love dearly, that this was their task or the way they should be expected to perform.
Yeah.
And if it's good enough for them, it has to be good enough for you.
Mhm.
Because, because we set our expectations for ourselves so much higher than we would ever set them for someone else. So I'm like, if you treat everybody like yourself all the time, like you would treat that person that you care about the most, you will start to give yourself some grace
Mhm. Yeah.
and just keep reminding yourself, and just be your own best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. As I was moving through the ACA work, putting the picture of myself like as my screensaver, and the image of my inner child is like a 4 or 5-year-old. So I found a picture that really represented her, and I still have it on my desk now, and it's such a good reminder that we're acting the way that we're acting for a reason. There's always a reason to our anger or our reactivity or our judgment, our criticism. It all stems back to something. And if you
Mhm.
think about what she had to endure, what that little you had to endure, that in and of itself is enough to bring tears to your eye.
I just co-authored, like, there's a book, and it literally, the entire book is letters to ourselves. So, like, I don't know how many people are in it, but we all had a little part of this book, and it was literally writing a letter to your younger self. And I can't wait for it to come out. I can't wait to read all the other people's letters because it's true. I mean, and when you did inner child work, did you do the opposite handwriting?
I'm so bad with my left hand. Like, but I did write a letter from my inner child, and then I wrote a letter from my adult self back to my inner child. But I've heard that the left-handedness is really profound.
It really, well, and I'm left-handed, so to me it was the right-handedness, but it was really profound. And I think the reason, and again, I don't know, but they say it opens up the other side of your brain and there's all this kind of stuff. But when I was having to focus on the letters, I was letting go of my ego. I was
Ah,
letting go of what I thought I needed to hear.
yep.
Because when you're journaling and you're writing to yourself, you're still going, if you write a letter to yourself, your inner, your baby self, and then you're writing back, you're still going to subconsciously stop that and be like, oh, no, 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 she wouldn't have said that. That wouldn't
Yeah.
have been cool.
Yeah.
So when you let go of that, there was no holding back. It was a really short letter, like 3-word sentences and stuff. But I mean, some of it was very hard to read, but I could remember it as I was reading it. I could remember what I was thinking, kind of, so it was interesting. But no, it is definitely an exercise worth for people out there. Try it. If it doesn't work, it's okay. We're in this journey of, I think, throwing everything at the wall that you hear about, see what sticks.
Yeah.
What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for someone else. So the more tools you have in your tool belt, the better.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want to normalize if the people listening are like, I can't connect to my inner child. Like, I've not been able to sit down and do a meditation and feel her or visualize her or otherwise tend to her. And that's so normal when you come from a childhood of trauma to have different parts of your memory that are missing or blank at the moment, right? They're there somewhere, but they're not, like, you can't bring them to the surface. And to start slow with yourself. And again, with the compassion, if it's just looking at a photo every day and you don't have the memories or the feeling associated with it yet, give it some time. Give it some time to become more familiar to you.
Yep, absolutely. And it is difficult. I remember when I first heard the concept, I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. First of all, I don't want to even get to know her. Like, I know I was, at that point, my initial reaction was I didn't like her. She was a scared, whiny little baby.
Yep.
That's literally what my first reaction.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, why do you think she was a scared, whiny little baby? And then it was like, well, because she got beat up a lot. And I get it. Like, she was hurt. But they're like, no, but. Like, let's baby step, start small. And,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to go back and get to know that person. Like, I don't know. It was a difficult journey, but it was so worth it. And like you said, baby steps. And then you can go online. I mean, you can work with a coach, but you can also go online and get like an inner child workbook that walks you through some of the steps. And just to practice journaling, practice just asking your younger self one question every day and just seeing what you come up with.
Yep. Yeah. And not filtering the answer. I know that
Right.
another place our ego comes in where it's like, is that really coming from my inner child or is that just coming from my mind? And it's
Right.
like, does it matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
If the information that comes through is beneficial and helpful in your journey, like, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Nope.
Anything else any other tips that you would give women listening who are maybe just starting the journey or just starting to really acknowledge the depth of the trauma in their childhood?
The best thing I can say is honestly, just fill your head with information. Listen to these podcasts, find people that you can resonate, join support groups, get I don't want to say necessarily, you or me or whatever, but a coaching and a group coaching is amazing. Sometimes it's just a support group and there's power in numbers. There's power in knowing like other people, being in a room with other people. Like you and I could sit in a room together and half the time you go to say something and I'm thinking it.
Yeah.
But when you start, you don't want to voice those things. You might not be ready to talk about it, but just hearing that other people have that experience, it's helpful. So helpful.
Yeah. The co-regulation that we get from other people who can see us and have that non-judgment reflect that back to us and who are like, me too, right? I think that all of the time, or I went through that same thing in a different form with my family. My programs always involve a group component because of that, where it's so powerful to just hear another woman have the same experience and to that lower the shame that you feel because we think we did in everything.
Right, exactly. And my another suggestion I would make is if you go to a therapist, a coach, a psychiatrist, whatever it is, find someone that has lived experience. Because as I know, I had a psychology degree, and what they taught you in the psychology books is not what happened. It's just like every field, every niche. So lived experience does a lot. Like you need to be working with someone that you go, wow, she gets me. Like she or he gets me.
Yeah. Yeah. And to have that safety, that comfortability, because otherwise you're not going to open up. You're not going to be honest. Your body is going to tighten up and clench, and your nervous system is going to be like, no, this is not a safe.
Right. And that's ultimately what we're trying to just do is to get our nervous system back to a safe place, feeling safe all the time. And then obviously there's going to be times when your nervous system is in danger, and that's what your nervous system is there for. But you need to be able to regulate it back to that safe space. And that's the ultimate goal, because that's where your peace is and your joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tammy, at the end of these, I like to pull an oracle card. Are you familiar with oracle cards?
I've had them pulled.
Okay. So I like to have your participation to help pull on behalf of the listeners what the message is that they can use this week to stay more conscious in their healing.
Okay.
So would you close your eyes for me? And we'll just put the intention into the deck of what is the best message that the listeners need to hear. And I'm starting to shuffle. So whenever you feel like the shuffle's complete, you let me know when to stop.
Okay.
We got flow.
Flow.
If you're not watching the video, it's a picture of, it looks like a honey, is that what it's called? A honeycomb? No,
A honey, yeah, it's a honey spindle or something. You
spindle.
serve the honey with it. Yeah.
Honey with it. I'm going to look up in the book here what flow is, and I'm going to read it aloud. Flow. Listen to Mother Ocean. She has a story to tell you. It's a story of movement, of motion, of flow. Allow yourself to rest in the gentle rise and fall of the tides now. Life's natural rhythms. Even if you find yourself lost in the raging sea or swept into the riptide, relax into it. Fighting the tides only puts you at risk of drowning. Trust the universe is holding you afloat like the sweet, gentle waves of the ocean. Notice where you feel stuck. Move your body. Drink water. Soak in a tub. Water is your teacher. Learn from her all you need to know about finding your flow. Expand, contract, swirl, fill, ripple, gurgle, ebb, and flow.
Love it.
Yeah, that's a sweet message to end the.
That is very sweet.
Yeah. And tell listeners where they can find you if they want to connect to your work and your books and your coaching.
Probably the best place is just to go to my website, which is my name, tammyvincent.com. And you can get the course there. And as a matter of fact, I do have an 8-week course. And if you want to just put in the coupon code podcast, it's next to nothing. It's an amazing, I like to give that as a gift to the listeners. Because if you're on one of these podcasts listening, you could use what's in it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a sweet offer that you have. Perfect. We'll make sure to link everything in the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for your time, Tammy. It was such a pleasure to get to chat with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was fun, super fun.
I hope this episode was an illuminating one for you. And it's really my hope that by hearing mine and Tammy's stories that you feel less alone. If you are starting to really acknowledge the depth of your childhood experiences, know that we all come into our adulthood with a baggage of shit. It's just a matter of having more or less, or more intensity, less intensity, and being able to sift through that with compassion. Just because you are affected by trauma doesn't mean that you are doomed. It doesn't mean that you have to sit in an eternity of people pleasing or attracting unfulfilling or abusive relationships or otherwise. You have so much power over your future. And the more that women can start to really own their stories and shift away from the unconscious replay of the trauma, the more that we all are able to heal and really bring our unique, beautiful gifts to this world. To help you start to begin to view your relationships differently, I have a freebie that I want to offer you. It's called the Relationship Reset Guide. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. But this is a guide that you can use to start to implement some tools as you are doing your deeper processing work to start to be able to communicate your feelings without feeling guilty, to navigate your triggering emotions maturely so you aren't reacting, and to feel secure on your own so that you're not seeking something external to make you feel okay, seeking something external to help you find peace. So again, the link to the Relationship Reset Guide is in the show notes. Over and over and over, you are not alone. I'm here for you. This podcast is here for you. New episodes are dropping every Friday. So until then, I'll see you on the next episode.